when we're talking about communication, I'm talking about email, I'm talking about text, I'm talking about video calls, and I'm talking about chat as well. So when we look at those things, communication is the number one online activity going on there. And in our study, when Skype looks at communication, we look at one-to-one or one-to-a-few, because it's real, intimate communication. And what we found in those intimate situations, so unlike other social networks where it's perhaps a one-to-many, that people share more information about themselves, they will share more detail, they will share their screens, they will share pictures, they will share moments in a one-to-one or a one-to-few scenario. In fact, in the study that we've done, we see one-to-one sharing or one-to-few sharing, people share 4 times as much information. And in 2012, I don't have the 2013 figure yet, but there were 1.4 trillion pieces of information that were shared kind of outside voice on one-to-one and one-to-few scenarios. So what has this led to? And going back to the whole data explosion, this has led to literally hundreds and hundreds of different ways to communicate with people. There are, no longer are we just picking up the phone or going to one particular company. There are many, many different things going on. So what we feel and what our study showed was that people felt kind of overwhelmed by the options that they have in terms of trying to reach people, trying to get in touch with the people that they love. And also as well, I'm probably not alone in this, but we've seen lots of other people where your address books are kind of scattered across various different products and devices in the ether, because there's not necessarily one clear method of communication like there used to be. So what this has led to is a struggle really between the complexity of communication versus the intimacy that people want out of a communication system. So it's led to a struggle for us ourselves as consumers and people, but it's also led to issues for brands as well. How do they communicate with people when they're around? So the first thing that we notice that's happened is that there is very much a split, or what we call a bifurcation of communication. So on the one hand, you've got rich and intimate connections of video, of screen sharing, and of voice. And then on the other hand, you've got the quick and convenient, which is very much email, text, and social. So you've got a variety of different ways to communicate with people. And then you have to decide how that fits into who you're trying to communicate with. And we call this, or the new norm in our study we found is called mode switching. So, and it's all very much dedicated around the picture in the middle. So imagine that's my wife. It's not my wife. My wife's not quite that scary, but imagine it is. So, and I'm here in Vilnius, and so what normally happens is when I'm away, my wife communicates with me on my mobile because she knows it's always on. It's my alarm clock, and she'll start the day with something like on the text of where have I left the garage keys or something like that, and I'll say, well, they're in the pot where they should be, of course. And our communication will kind of vary throughout the day on Skype, sometimes on text, on email, and what have you. But then in the evening, so I didn't last night, but what I normally do, so 9 o'clock time here, 7 o'clock in the UK, I will make time to have a video call with my kids when they've come home from school. And they'll want to know what Vilnius is like, and they'll say, what are the people are like? And I'll say, well, of course, they're lovely. What's the food like? It's really great. Is it cold? Actually, not really. No, it's lovely. For coming from London, it's great. And are they getting any sweets and chocolate? And of course, that's really kind of how it goes on. And you will have your own instances of this. So, how you're communicating with people. I spoke to somebody yesterday who uses Skype almost exclusively for all of her communications, except for one person that she actually used as a competing product, which hopefully I've talked her out of now. But it's just kind of interesting how people are using different products for different people around that. Does that kind of make sense? Yeah? A few nods? Cool. Okay. So kind of moving on. Skype's vision. And one thing I haven't done yet, and it's a little bit remiss of me to do so, is to ask you here how many people use Skype. Can I have a show of hands? Wow. A lot more than Windows Phone. That's good, but that's fine. I don't mind that, because now I work on Skype. We've got iPhone apps, Android apps. That's great. That's cool. I like that. So, you know, there's a lot of people. I'm going to guess and say maybe 80%. So that's a high penetration. But we kind of see that. I mean, in Lithuania, for example, we have around 1 million users, so about 30% of the population. But I believe that makes up over half of internet time spent on that. But Skype's vision is very much bring the humanity back into the communications for billions of people. And I'm going to say that again. Bring the humanity back to communication for billions of people, which is a huge number when you think of it, and it's a lofty goal. We think we're on the right track, and one of the reasons why I think we're on the right track, and I've got a video that I'm going to show you just after this slide, is just how people communicate, how Skype impacts on real people, on real people's lives. So you're about to see a video. It's a little bit longer than I'd normally like to show. It's about a minute and a half or so. And it's a story of two girls that meet each other on Skype, and you'll see how their life unfolds and how they help each other by using Skype as well. I must warn you, I've seen this video probably about 40 times, and even now, every time I see it, I get a little bit welled up. It's a bit teary, so men, kind of brace yourself. Women, don't worry. But please enjoy this video for a second.
I consider Paige like a long-lost sister that I never had, that I should have had. The crazy thing is, me and Paige have been so close, but we actually never met.
Oh, this was the first time that I held Sarah.
My mom was pregnant with me and just found out that I had one arm at 20 weeks, I think. She wanted to find someone else that was experiencing the same thing. So she went on a website and found Teresa and Paige.
When me and Sarah were born, our parents were sending letters and pictures to each other and stuff, so they became close.
And then we kind of lost touch because Teresa had 2 more kids. When I was 8, I needed someone there that could understand everything about me, and I was like, I want to find Paige.
My mum got an email from her mum, and apparently they had been looking for us for 3 years. We started emailing first. I asked her one day if she had Skype. What time is it for you?
I think when I first saw Paige, it was like I've seen a mirrored image of me.
When I saw Sarah, it was kind of like, oh, this is how people see me.
We'll talk about toys and life and compare things.
She doesn't really worry about what other people think about her. She can walk around happily in a short-sleeve top. She helped me a lot and gave me a lot of confidence. There weren't less challenges after I met her, it's just that I wasn't going through the challenges alone anymore.
And I moved the brush or I moved my finger.
And so I moved my finger.
Yeah.
I could tell Sarah things that I wouldn't be able to tell my friends. I trust her with my life. We have been so close for 8 years, but thousands of miles away from each other. We definitely wouldn't be very close if it wasn't for Skype and how it's brought us together.
Some best friends come and go. I feel like Paige will always be my best friend no matter what. It's crazy that we've never met. We've always dreamed of it, but it's just never happened yet. But I can't believe it. I don't think it's really sunk in.
I'm really nervous. No, it doesn't seem real. 5 minutes and 34 seconds. I'm sure we will always find time for each other because it's one of those friendships that you don't find twice.
We're like 2 needles in a haystack that just found each other.
clearly every conversation on Skype is just like that and empowering and enriching, but of course it's not, because on various different platforms. But that's just a really good example of how Skype does bring people together. And I recently, yesterday, heard that there are a lot of people within this country that are out of this country, and I'm sure that Skype comes into play as a communication platforms whilst people are away. When we look at getting to billions, and it's a lofty goal, as I mentioned a moment ago. One of the ways we're going to do that is through our kind of brand recognition. So those 13 years ago when in Estonia, when Skype was launched, and it was nearly called Sky Peer-to-Peer. Fortunately, it was shortened to Skype, but that's where the name comes from. It was very much now seen as a verb, if you like, to do things. So in the UK, nobody vacuum cleans the floor, everybody hoovers the floor, because that's the brand name that everybody calls vacuum cleaners. So even if you have a Dyson, people still hoover the floor. In part of my travels in my new role, I went to Poland a couple of months ago, and in Poland, the generic word for training shoes, for sneakers, is Adidas. So you can have Adidas Nikes, Adidas Pumas, Adidas, I guess, which is, but it's just interesting how these words kind of come about. Certainly, we believe that Skype is the verb for voice over IP. So sometimes people may not even be using Skype. They might say, I'll Skype you later, I'll catch you on Skype or something like that. And that's really key. That's what makes brands hang around. It's what makes brands grow, and it's what brings love to a brand as well. But our goal, and we're kind of getting there really, is being on all connected devices. Of course, you'll all have a chance to have a look at Windows 8, which I saw at the front, and Windows Phone 8, but we're obviously on all the Windows platforms, on Surface, on Xbox One. If you don't have an Xbox One, I would thoroughly recommend getting one just for Skype, because it's so cool, because it's got the camera in there, and the lens actually follows you around the room. It's like TV style. It's just really quite amazing. Of course, we're on iPhone, we're on iPad, we're on Mac. We're on Android devices as well. We're on Kindle Fire. We're on BlackBerry. And then the one at the top of the tree. So 2 months ago, we had about 1,999,999 people on Skype on connected TVs, until I connected my dad to his connected TV. So we now have 2 million, which is a nice round number. And what's going to enable this space to grow, I think, and I think it's an exciting space, is when more TVs are out there having a camera actually built in, which my dad's does. But currently our reach on TVs isn't particularly strong, but I think it's an area of growth as well. So millions of people rely on Skype for sharing everyday experiences. So currently, we have around 340 million, so as you can see, we've got a way to go to reach our lofty goal. But we have about 2.8 billion minutes used on Skype every single day. So if you've got a calculation and want to turn those minutes into the hours and the days and the years, it's a huge amount of time that people are spending on Skype every single day. When we look at international calls, we're waiting for the new figure. I think the new figure is going to be closer to 40%, but currently we're talking about a third of all international calls are made using Skype, which is probably not a huge surprise. When we break that down, and mobile is incredibly important to us, and we're seeing a lot of our growth coming from mobile devices. In fact, our mobile reach over the last year grew by 100%. And that was primarily on iPhone and Android devices as well. And as you can see here, the split between mobile users and desktop users, and I expect that gap to narrow kind of all the time, and in maybe 2 years, maybe 5 years, predicting things is always difficult, right? Perhaps the mobile will overtake PC. I don't know. I think what is interesting is that bottom figure, is the multi-device figure, which is around 15%, 20%, because what we typically see of Skype users is they tend to be a PC user, or they tend to be a mobile user, And quite rarely, as that figure would suggest, that they're using both as well. So certainly what we see with adding both of those screens and devices, that you're reaching a lot more people as well. And I think that that's, when we look at mobile and the implications of that, I think that that really is where hopefully this message landed about millennials favoring Skype. And this is something that we actually blogged about in the last week or so, because what we've seen is on other platforms that they're declining. Their millennial audience is declining, and it's an incredibly valuable audience, that 18 to 24-year-old person, because as we know, they're not really watching TV, they are online, and where are they clustering, kind of thing. So these are just some interesting takeouts from the blog post that we kind of sent out, that our millennials at kind of 28% growth year on year. We reached globally 24% of all the millennial audience. But I think, you have to ask the question, why are we doing this? Why are they coming to us? Why are they using Skype? And a lot of it, I think, comes down to sharing moments, being in a safe environment, knowing they're not going to be spied on or things like that. It's about brand safety. It's being reliable. It's being connected, and particularly kind of on mobile devices as well. And we're seeing clearly a lot of minutes per month from our millennial audience kind of using us as well. So this leads us to the question, well, what do people do on Skype? And clearly, 80% of you in this room know exactly what you do on Skype, because you will do all of these things yourselves on Skype, whether it's chatting on your phone, voice calls, sharing screens, group video calls, celebrating moments that matter, leaving video messages for other people. I think the celebrating moments that matter is a really key one, because on the back end, on our servers, we see a lot of uplift around major holiday periods, things like Mother's Day, things like World Cup, things like that, where you expect people to kind of get together and want to chat and get in touch with people about these things. So it's all about sharing intimately as well. So what does this mean for brands? So first of all, Skype we see as very much a trusted environment. I've spoken about that brand recognition. I think the key figure on here is that 64%. So 64% of users have great respect for the opinion of others on Skype. Let me give you an example. So my wife and I had our third child last year. Those of you in the room that have 3 children will know that you're incredibly limited on the cars that you can buy that can fit 3 young children in. I live away from my particular family, but the people that I trust most when I'm buying a new car are my dad and my brother. And I spoke to them about my conundrum, about what to buy, and asked them their advice around that in a sharing experience, because that's what Skype is all about. People are discussing things. It might be which restaurant to go to, it might be what film, it might be what clothing, what makeup, what car, what bank, whatever. But you really kind of benefit as a brand from being part of that conversation. Or being around that kind of conversation as intimate moments are taking place. We know the vast majority of our users connect with family and friends, and they choose Skype because of its trust, its personal nature, and it's very much a brand-safe environment. So what I wanted to chat about now is making brand connections where human connections are made. And this is what I mentioned at the start of the presentation as something that we wanted to highlight around Coke and something that we did with them in Mexico, which is just very much kind of beyond the banner. So the joy of being near the ones you love. What we do know is that Coke clearly have a bit of a thing for holidays, a bit of a thing for Christmas, and there's a lot of promotional work that goes around that. As I mentioned earlier, so does Skype as well, and we see huge uplifts. So what we saw was a tremendous opportunity to partner together to build an experience that would enable people to share their emotional moments with their loved ones as well. So what did they do? They built a phone booth, a Skype phone booth, in the center of Mexico City in their biggest mall there. They built it using a Surface machine, and it was all kind of branded all around it. They just left it alone, just there. So there's a discovery element of people just in the mall saying, you know, what's this big Coke thing with Skype in it? What do I do? And then they kind of videoed people kind of in action as they were using it and what was going on, and managed to not only get an experiential campaign going on, but then use the video as well to kind of highlight the nature of Skype and Coke bringing people together. So I've got a short video to show you.
Estamos desde México saludándote, deseándote feliz Navidad, mi vida hermoso. Muchísimo frío, estamos aquí a como a 10 bajo cero. ¡Wow! Muchísimas gracias,
So it's just a short snippet, but hopefully you kind of got the idea there that of people discovering this phone booth in the mall, that they were calling their family and friends. Clearly some people were very emotional about that because they hadn't spoken to them. And we just gave people free use of doing that. And certainly where brands can kind of come into the communication space, we can certainly look at doing things like that and using the power of bringing people together. I've just noticed on my timer on my Windows Phone app that I'm probably being a lot quicker than I would have liked to be. So I mean, we're kind of getting close to wrapping up, but I wanted to kind of leave you with what our plans are over the next few months or so. I can't share everything that's going on with Skype because we are in a process of really kind of pushing the boundaries of where Skype can be. But certainly when we look at some of the commercial and advertising opportunities, we're seeing kind of new ad units coming on iPad, on iPhone, and launching Android as well. New connected experiences and new ways of reaching these people as well from country to country too. So we're very much expanding our cross-device coverage. But what I would advise anybody here to do is to either ask me a question, find me on Skype, it's Chris James MSA, or speak to, there's 3 people here from, so Gideus, Leonard and Lisa from AdNet Media as well. So if you see these guys walking around and you want more information or want to connect with me, then please feel free to do so. So thank you very much for your time. And I'll just leave you with the song and a few more words of thanks, but I understand there may be some questions coming up. So if anybody has any questions, please shout out.